my prized possessions. So
Wow.
that's what I call the cosmic kisses. It's how the universe tells me that even though The Conjuring is not an accurate portrayal of what actually happened, it is a misrepresentation of a great deal of things, great many things that happened in the house. It's still okay. It's the way the universe tells me it's okay, because the truth of the matter is my books, House of Darkness, House of Light, the trilogy, would be languishing in obscurity, and no one would know about the true story behind that movie had it not been for that movie.
Wow.
Well, I do have a question that's kind of something that I wanted to know, and I have a reason kind of behind it, kind of a personal reason. Was your mother actually possessed?
No, my mother was viciously attacked. And my mother was viciously attacked because the Warrens came to our house on a Friday night in late August of 1974, had called my mother. It was of course, well before the days of cell phones, had called my mother from their home in Monroe, Connecticut, and asked if they could come to the house that night. Well, my father was due home from a business trip, and he had been gone for 8 or 10 days. And my mother reluctantly agreed that they could stop by. And when my father got home from the trip and sat down to have dinner, she told him that the Warrens were coming, and he was not a happy camper. All that man wanted to do was sit down and put his feet up and watch a Red Sox game that night. That is all in the world that mattered to him. And he thought that the Warrens were coming around to exploit us. He did not trust them. He did not, that's another thing about the film. It's, like all warm and fuzzy and touchy-feely and, come on in and, let's be friends. And nothing could have been further from the truth. My father had he just simply did not trust them or, what their intentions were, whereas my mother did, and felt comforted that she had someone that she could share what was happening in the house with, that would not be judgmental, that would believe her, would, believe us. And meanwhile, my father was still, playing king of denial, and, he didn't believe any of this stuff. And the girls' imaginations are running wild when I'm not home to keep a handle on things here, and, doing the whole macho 70s daddy thing, when he's got his wife and 6 little girls at home that are, basically terrified out of their minds because they keep seeing, full body apparitions hanging around the house. And it was, it was a difficult time in our family, honestly, because we felt very much abandoned by him. We felt like he, if he didn't believe Mom, then he was certainly not going to believe us. And my sisters didn't want to burden my mother with what they were experiencing. And so, of course, they brought all of it to me. And then finally, about 6 months after we moved in, I went to my mother and I said, we need to talk. I need to tell you what's going on with the girls. And I always referred to them as though I was somehow a third parent. And it's not that I was so much older, but I did really function as, my mother's helper. And, it was a position that I filled when my father was absent from the home, which was a great deal of time because he had his own business. He had a trunk business of jewelry and imports and collectibles and stuff from India and China and, all these exotic things that he sold. He was not a truck driver. My father has never been a truck driver. And I will just break away from this for just a moment to tell you that the one thing that my mother took extraordinary exception to when she saw the film, I thought she would be upset by the whole exorcism scene, which was completely fabricated in the mind of a screenwriter. None of that happened. None of it was true. But what she was actually upset about was the fact that the film portrayed our family as somehow like godless heathens compared to the devout Roman Catholic Warrens. And that's just simply not true. My father was born and raised in a strict Roman Catholic household. He went to parochial school. He was an altar boy throughout his youth. When he graduated from high school, he went into the Navy to serve his country. And the plan was that when he left his tour of duty, that he would go directly into the seminary and become a priest. That's what my father's life path was intended to be until he met my mother while he was in the Navy, and then everything changed. He fell in love. But we were all baptized. We were all born into the Catholic Church. We were all made our first communion. The Catholic Church turned its back on us. And I can't even, honestly say that it was the Catholic Church as a whole that turned its back on us. It was our parish priest. And on the Easter, it was not the first, the second year that we were living at the farm. We all went to church on Easter morning, and my little sister April was, I think, 6 or maybe 7 at the time, or about to turn 7. And when the priest was doing high mass at the altar and said the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, April turned to my mother and in her big girl voice in a very quiet church said, "See, Mommy, God has ghosts too, just like us." And when she did that, every head in the church turned to look at our family, who occupied an entire pew because there were 7 of us. And when the mass was over, the priest approached my father and said, "Mr. Perron, I would appreciate it if you would take your family and worship elsewhere."
Wow.
And my father was so hurt and so dejected. He felt completely, utterly abandoned by the religion that he had devoted his life to. And we never went back to church again. The only time you'll ever see any member of our family in a church is for a wedding or a funeral.
That's sad.
Well, that's the truth. That's how it really is. And the reason that my mother was so resentful of the treatment of our family in terms of somehow being less than spiritual people was because you both work in this field, and you know that spirit don't target atheists.
Right.
It's almost like you almost have to have some kind of spiritual belief system to be tested. It's like a test. It's like I don't know. I can't explain it exactly, but it's very unfair to misrepresent how we were in terms of our faith as a family, because it misrepresents what has been discovered in the field as a whole, that very often families that are targeted in one way or another, whether it be in a home that they're sharing or through other means, are often very deeply involved. Religious people are very spiritual people that are already open to spirit, that are already attached to a higher power, that have a connection to source in some way, shape, or form. And that seems to naturally open the third eye. And so when you're in an environment where there is this type of activity, you have more of a tendency to see it, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does.
So does
Absolutely.
that answer the question, or did I go off on a tangent?
Oh no, that was perfect. I'm not going to say awesome again because that was perfect. Okay, I have another question. Jacob Smith, and what he said, I'm going to read it verbatim, has conjured up a question. Jacob Smith has conjured up a question. Did the spirits around you have any influence at all on this new book? Said he knows it's about UFOs, but did the spirits help at all?
Yes. And in fact, the second chapter, or the kind of the opening is entitled "Giving Up the Ghost," and the whole chapter is about how I'm very involved in ufology and in studying, UFO, UAP phenomenon, so on and so forth. But that I think, in fact, I would say I know that it was from living at the farm and having so much exposure, and some would say overexposure to the netherworld, to the fourth dimension realm, where the spirits seem to reside, that it was having those experiences that opened me up for what I saw in the sky above the farm. I do believe that there is a point of correlation and integration which exists between fourth and fifth dimension. I believe that everything is one thing, that everything is energy, and that there's no veil, that any barrier to us seeing fourth or fifth or sixth or seventh dimensionally is a self-imposed one. It's how we relegate ourselves to living in a three-dimensional, five-sensory realm, but it is not the truth of our existence. So when you're a child, then you suddenly realize that your reality is much, much bigger than you always presumed that it was. It leaves you open to further experiences. And even though some would consider that, spirits are dead, I think that that's not the case. They are sentient, prescient beings in another realm. And the galactic family, I never refer to them as aliens. They're no more alien to this planet than we are. But the galactic family, being living, breathing, sentient, prescient beings, are inhabiting another dimension as well as our own, and can hop and skip through dimensions at ease, and so can the spirit. So, yes, I do believe that there is a point of correlation and integration between the two, and I explore that theory in some depth in my new book, which is not yet out, by the way. It will be as soon as I finish reviewing the proof, but it is not yet available for purchase on Amazon. Everybody make a note of that. Lord. But yeah, Jacob is a follower of mine, and he's very sweet, and always asks very erudite, intelligent questions, and he's just a lovely young man.
Hi, y'all. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you, babe.
Stan had to step out for just a minute. He'll be back here shortly. He's wanted me to go ahead with the next question. It's from Leon Wilkes. And he said to ask you if you believe that your life growing up battling the dark forces is associated with you being a contactee.
I think so, but I'm not positive about that. I think that I came into this world with an otherworldly connection. The experiences that I had at the farm, the big one where I saw an entire flotilla of ships pass over the farm when I was 13, that I refer to that as my first conscious contact, because I remember it, but I feel absolutely certain that I had prior contact with extraterrestrials before that age, but I just don't remember it because I was so young, or it freaked me out. And we have this self-imposed amnesia that happens when you see things that you just can't explain, and so the human being has coping skills, mechanisms, default mechanisms for dealing with things that are traumatic. And one of them is to bury it so deeply that you don't remember it. And another one is to dismiss it entirely as an illusion. So I think that I had probably multiple contacts prior to that age, but that was the first one that I remember in great detail.
Wow. I'm back, by the way. So you actually